Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Secrets of a Witch podcast with me, Sabrina Scott. If you don't know me, hello and welcome. I am a professional witchy person, tarot reader, spiritual teacher. I could go on. I have a few books out. My fourth one is coming out this summer. I'm super excited. And that's all I'm going to say about myself for now. You guys are going to get the hang of it. On this podcast, I talk all about life, love, spirituality, witchcraft, magic, divination, astrology, healing, positivity, living our best life, and everything in between. It's a little bit random, but what I've been told from folks who listen to this show regularly is that people do tend to walk away feeling better when they leave than when they showed up. My mission is always to leave people with thought-provoking stuff to consider, hopefully a rewritten limiting belief, and just optimism for the future and belief in ourselves. I feel so strongly about all of that stuff. So I'm just going to speak about this for 60 seconds and we'll move on to something else. The Canadian federal election was yesterday. I'm not going to get into thoughts on the politics of it all. I'll probably get into that on Instagram eventually. I did an Instagram live this morning where I did spill the beans, the good, the bad, and the ugly about my day yesterday, because I actually was supervising along with 3 other lovely, incredibly skilled supervisors. Our team was so good. We were overseeing a pretty big site with tons of polls in the double digits and a team of 18 people. And honestly, it was a great day. I was working from 8 in the morning until 2 in the morning and not allowed to leave. It was honestly a crazy experience. So if you're curious about the details on that, check into my recent Instagram live. If you guys are interested, maybe I'll do a podcast episode about it. I feel like I've kind of said everything I have to say about it there, but it is something, just really quickly, that I do recommend everybody do. Wherever it is that you live, why not sign up to help with the voting process? I do think it is so important to understand how the systems that we live in actually work on the ground and what it looks like. And I actually did get to oversee the vote counting process and actually to count some votes myself when we were needing someone to step in and do that. And it was such a cool experience to just get to go through that myself rather than have that be kind of abstract, fill in the blanks. Like, it really made me uncomfortable. I didn't really know how that actually worked on the ground, and it was an incredibly educational experience. Everyone should do it. Again, recent Instagram live, go check it out. We'll give you all the information if you're curious, but wherever you live, especially if you're in Canada where I live, or the United States where I know a lot of you are, or really any other country that does have a democracy where people do vote for their leadership, go participate, see what it actually looks like, see what's involved in the process. And I think you'll get to see a lot of positive things about your fellow community members. Everyone's working together, helping each other. And you'll also get to see maybe what some of the insecurities are in that system, right? Like where those liabilities might be, or growth opportunities, shall we say. So I'll leave that there for now. So today I wanted to not talk about that at all. That's my speech on that for now. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about contempt and how it is a killer of relationships. And it's interesting. I'm not going to talk about the election in this episode, but just to kind of introduce why is contempt as a theme on my mind, I will tell a quick little anecdote just to kind of introduce why I'm even thinking about this. So, as you guys know, my family history is a bit fraught, and relationships with family is a bit like touch and go. It's not everything I hoped and dreamed. So you guys who have been here for a while will know all the details of why that is. But after a bunch of years of pretty much no contact. I have the occasional text conversation with my dad, and he's a very particular type of person, and I've just accepted that is who he is. And I will do another episode probably sometime soon about emotionally immature parents and self-absorbed parents, and what impact does that have on those of us who grow up in that type of environment. Because I do think it is something that many of us will spend our entire lives trying to shake off and rewrite what that's done to our brain. But anyway, just to kind of tell this really brief little anecdote here, I had asked my dad, hey, have you voted? I was letting him know that I was overseeing the election in my neighborhood. And I said, yeah, have you voted? He said, yes, I voted for the Liberals. I said, oh, okay. Well, I voted for the Conservatives, and here's why. And I gave like 4 or 5 different talking points. I can't remember exactly how many I gave, but it was all pretty well considered. It was also pretty brief. My vibe in the conversation was very curious, open. Like, I wasn't trying to start any drama or anything like that. It was just like making conversation. That's, pretty superficial. It's the only type of thing that we can really talk about, nothing deep. And his response was really interesting, as it reminded me, like, oh yeah, this is what I grew up with. He's still that guy. No matter how much I grow and learn and accomplish, he's still that person. And I basically what he said was, well, Carney is Ivy League, like you're one of our other relatives, and do you really want to get into it? My dad was like, I have 40 plus years in international business. Are you sure you want to talk about this with me? And so, of course, at that point, I was like, hey, not really. Like, my points are considered due to my own experience, my own reading, my own research, my own deep consideration of so many different things, and consumption of news media and reporting from literally every different political spectrum. Like, I listen to right-wing media, I listen to left-wing media, I listen to media from the center, and I kind of mishmash it all together to figure out what's true. And I've read a ton of shit over my PhD, right? So I'm pretty, I know some stuff. I know a thing or two about a thing or two. And so what I noticed about myself was this really brief, this knee-jerk urge to basically whip him in the face with all of my credentials. Well, I'm doing a PhD, I've read all this shit, like I've read 400 books in the last 3 years, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't fall into that trap. But it was so interesting to notice that reaction, like wanting to be seen as valid, wanting to be seen as someone who has an opinion worth considering from my own father, that is something that some small part of me deep inside likely still craves, even though I've done so much healing and work around this topic. And so what I want to point out to you is this, right? Before we really get into what is contempt, what's the problem with that? So notice, first of all, my dad's competition, intellectual competition and instinct to belittle and put down his own daughter, to basically insinuate that all of my opinions are complete bullshit and his opinions are right because, blah, blah, blah. And so there's a lack of curiosity. There's a lack of respect. There is a competitive nature to it all. It's very condescending and arrogant. And it also is dripping with something called contempt. And so when people speak to us this way, but particularly our parents, we want so much to be loved by them. It's such a natural instinct to want to be loved by our parents. And when our parents treat us with contempt, our usual kind of default childhood programming is to react with a desire to please, a desire to be seen, a desire to be heard, a desire to be accepted, a desire to be loved, a desire to become legible. And so it's pretty interesting, honestly. I think one of the reasons that my 20-year-old self was attracted to academia in the first place. Obviously, half of it is that intellectual, endless curiosity and thirst for knowledge, which I've always had. So that's one half of it. And then the other half of it, honestly, if I'm being completely frank with y'all, it was that desire to be finally good enough for my dad, to see me as lovable. And isn't that interesting to admit? And so it's such an interesting thing for me to think about. I think a lot of us do this without realizing it on our life path, the careers that we choose, etc. And so I think part of the reason why my PhD is taking me so long to do is once I realized that I would never get that love, it made me look at the entire thing completely differently. And I kind of stopped caring. I was like, oh, well, whatever. Because my confidence in myself and my value is not related to that, So I will finish it for myself and whatever. I've also become a little bit disillusioned with academia, to be honest, but that's another topic for another day. But anyway, so I had that little knee-jerk reaction, of playing that competitive game, playing by his rules, playing by his standards, playing by his defaults, and getting into a bit of a pissing match about it, right? But of course, I decided not to. So I noticed the impulse. I stepped back. And I just responded, hey, not trying to ruffle any feathers, not trying to be antagonistic, just trying to have a chill conversation. No worries, basically. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something very, very de-escalating. I decided not to play that dick measuring game because that's not who I am. That's not how I want to be. I really don't feel that way of conversing is worth my time. If anyone does want to push me into that, then for me that's a bit of a red flag because that's not really the values by which I engage with folks. It's just that's not really how I see the world. I don't think everyone is out to attack me. And notice that kind of seems to be his default. Everything's kind of seen and interpreted in the most aggressive way possible. And so the way that he responds is with contempt and kind of insultingness towards me. Super interesting. And it's so cool to be healed enough that I can observe it while it's happening, observe myself while it's happening, not be triggered by it, and just reroute that programming, because I really was not upset by that. It was something I observed, it happened, I moved on with my day. But what it did give me was something to talk to you guys about, because I think this concept of contempt and noticing it in our relationships is incredibly important. It's something I've experienced with men before in a dating context. Pretty interesting. And if anyone is familiar with the Gottmans, they're a pretty famous couple, quite elderly, but they're very, very good. Their work is on relationships, particularly romantic relationships. They have a bunch of books out on this. They have a whole army of trained therapists in the Gottman method, and they have done a lot of extensive long-term research on the couples that end up working out and being happy together long-term and the ones that don't. And in their research, they have what they call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And one of those 4 horsemen is contempt. And so I just want to talk to you guys about that because it is, in my opinion, the biggest predictor of a relationship not being healthy or not working out or just not being happy. Okay, so just really briefly, the 4 horsemen as defined by the Gottmans, and I completely agree with this. Obviously, they're more qualified than I am to talk about this, but pretty interesting. They are stonewalling, defensiveness, contempt, and criticism. But today I just want to focus on contempt. And so the Gottmans do agree with me, actually, now that I realize it, is that contempt is the worst of these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for relationships. They call it the number 1 predictor of divorce. They seem a little bit more optimistic than I am in terms of people being able to turn it around. So if you're not too sure exactly what contempt is, how I think about it is, You can tell something is contemptuous because someone is looking down at you. They clearly don't respect you. They are demeaning and belittling you. They're disrespecting you. Everything that they say and think is putting themselves above you. They're not seeking to understand you. They're not curious about why you think what you think. They don't say, hey, you're a dumbass. They say, oh, that's an interesting perspective. Can you tell me how you came to that conclusion? Like, I'd be curious to learn more about that. Like, why do you think that? If we're not being contemptuous, we assume that the person we're talking to is smart and capable and has reasons for doing what they do, and we want to be curious about them and collaborate with them. But contempt is absolutely the opposite. The Gottmans do call it the number one predictor of divorce, and contempt is it's negative thoughts as well about one's partner or just whoever you're in relationship with, whatever type of relationship it is. It's disrespectful. It is the point of contempt. Like, it's trying to make people feel small. It's belittling. It's condescending. I know I keep saying all of these words again and again, but I just really hope that you guys understand what contempt is. It's a massive, massive, massive red flag. And the opposite of contempt is love, fondness, admiration, and appreciation. Admiring who you're in a relationship with, like admiring your child, appreciating your child, respecting your child, et cetera, et cetera. And ideally, in a romantic relationship, we want to admire and appreciate and just adore our partner. We don't want to be thinking that we're above them. We don't want to be pitying them. We don't want to be feeling sorry for them and insulting them and positioning them as below us. If we really feel that way about somebody, we probably should not be dating them. You know what I mean? Like, we should not be friends with someone we really don't respect. Like, what's that about? And I think a lot of people get off on the elevating themselves above other people, and I don't even necessarily mean sexually. I just mean that there's a lot of people who are so deeply insecure that the only way that they can feel stable in themselves is by surrounding themselves with people that they think that they feel better than, that they feel superior to. And it's pretty interesting, right? It's either they are surrounding themselves with people that they can feel superior to, or even if they are worried that someone around them is actually better than them, they're going to do everything within their power to belittle that person and try to demolish them and take them down, like kill their confidence, diminish all of their accomplishments, etc., etc., etc. And this often does work, which is so fucked up and just horrible. And so I just wanted to quote exactly something from the Gottman Institute blog, because I think they've really nailed it in terms of making this information super concise and understandable. And then I'll continue with just kind of some of what I think about this. So this is, quote, their blog. And so the quote is, "When you communicate with contempt, the results can be cruel. Treating others with disrespect and mocking them with sarcasm and condescension are forms of contempt. So are hostile humor, name-calling, mimicking, and body language, such as eye-rolling and sneering. In whatever form, contempt is poisonous for a relationship because it conveys disgust and superiority, especially moral, ethical, or characterological. Contempt, simply put, says, I'm better than you and you are lesser than me. Contempt is fueled by long-simmering negative thoughts about one's partner, and it arises in the form of an attack on someone's sense of self. Inevitably, contempt leads to more conflict, particularly dangerous and destructive forms of conflict, rather than to reconciliation. It is virtually impossible to resolve a problem when your partner is getting the message that you're disgusted with them and that you're condescending and acting as their superior." So that's the end of the quote. And I really could not have said this better myself. They are really nailing it here. Obviously, they're the ones that have done a ton of original, groundbreaking research on this stuff. So obviously, they're nailing it in terms of how they're explaining it. And so what I really want to hammer home here is it's so important to be on the lookout for this in the relationships that you're in. They think it can be fixable through a culture of appreciation. In my opinion, it's like we're all adults. It's not worth your fucking time. Like, that's my opinion. And so if you do notice that you're in a relationship, a friendship, a dating relationship where someone has contempt towards you, I don't think it's salvageable. And if you are someone who does have contempt for people in your life, like your lovers, your friends, just like check yourself before you wreck yourself. Like, go to therapy and like stop being an asshole. You know what I mean? It's like it is so possible and easy to be respectful and kind and loving towards other people. And I'm just so sick of contemptuous individuals. And so, in a way, it is super, just a loop back to the start of this conversation. It's super interesting to have that short text chat with my dad and notice that loop that I so often was pulled into as a teenager. You know, I was so pulled into it. I was so eager to prove that I wasn't inferior, that I'm not stupid and worthless, that I'm not whatever. You know what I mean? And it's so cool now to be like, you know, I've grown enough to be like, this is a you problem. And so some of you guys might be wondering, like, why not just like completely say no? He's your, like, you know, and you know what? For many years I did. I don't know if I've talked about this publicly, but over Christmas, this past Christmas, it hit me on Christmas Day that, you know what, I forgive my parents. And I never sought to feel that. It was never on my to-do list, you know, feel forgiveness. I always have kind of felt that forgiveness is not something I would ever do. So it kind of surprised me when it crept up on me. And so I do forgive all of that. However, it's an interesting thing. I think the conversation made me realize how far I've come and how much I've healed. And it also reminded me what I need to keep an eye on, you know. It's been very, very interesting. And I'll talk more about, you know, family stuff perhaps another time. It's not really what we're getting into, but it really made me realize, like, wow, I dealt with that like every day as a kid. You know, and I do think it was so crucial for my healing process to go no contact with him for a period of years. So I could be completely away from that contemptuous vibe and heal my brain in a solitary way. And I think that's the only reason I've been able to get to where I am in terms of that healing journey and having that awareness, doing the intentional reroute. And that is something I wouldn't even have really been able to have recognized like 15 years ago that was even happening. You know, it was just a jumble of emotion that would just be so overwhelming. But anyway, enough about that. My main point of this episode is to really encourage y'all to be on the lookout for contempt. Some of my most common questions, readings, coaching sessions, the questions I get from folks so often are about your relationships, your love life especially, and relationships with family and friends to a lesser degree, but I do still get that. And so what I've learned in doing this work is so many of us, our relationships are the most important part of our life. They're what stress us out. They're what keep us going. They're what inspire us. And they can take such a grasp on us if they're unhealthy or negative. And it can be so difficult to parse out, hold on, why does this feel off? Why does this feel negative? What's wrong with this relationship? Like, what is it that makes it toxic? Is this fixable or not? And so many people grapple with this. A lot of folks are up and down. I know tons of people who are breaking up right now, getting divorced right now. There is something in the air in regards to that, for sure. And contempt is such a glaring red flag for anyone who is going through that right now. It is the year of the snake. It's a year of shedding. We had a crazy eclipse season last month. This month, there's been so much going on astrologically that's just created so much change. And so I do think a lot of us will be seeing things a little bit differently We'll be looking at things with some fresh eyeballs. And I do think having this language, this list of these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse as provided by the Gottmans, contempt, to even know what that word is, the specificity of it, and what does that mean in the context of a relationship between 2 people? What's that look like behaviorally? What does that do to us emotionally when we're on the other side of that? Why might someone even do that in the first place? In my opinion, if someone's treating you like that, they really can't be reasoned with, which is why I didn't explain to my dad, like, hey, that was mean. He's not going to give a shit. It doesn't matter. Whatever. I'm going to move on with my day. I don't really believe in engaging in that way, so I'm just going to move on. When it comes to contempt in romantic relationships, I would just fucking end the relationship if you notice that's happening. Done. The end. Move on. Heal. And if you're the one that's acting contemptuous, ask yourself, like, what the fuck am I doing? Why do I want to be romantically involved with someone who I don't really respect? It's a weird place to be. So please, if you are engaging in contempt in any way, just check yourself and realize that is not really a cool way to act. Like, it just is not cool, So I hope that now that y'all have that language, this concept, I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with it, but I just really wanted to parse it out a little bit more today. Now that we have this language, I do hope that you will do some self-reflection on your own behavior, your own patterns, perhaps with family, perhaps in your dating life, perhaps in your friendships. I know this does hit different people in different areas of their life. I know some people, all their romantic relationships are awesome, and then the toxicity arises with the friend group. And I know some folks, it's totally the other way around. For some people, it's with their family. So it's something to be on the lookout for, both in the giving and receiving aspect of it. Contempt is not cute, okay? So I don't think that if contempt is present, an actual, authentic, happy, healthy, mutually respectful relationship is possible. And I just want to leave y'all with that. Something to think about. On another note, not to just change gears a little bit abruptly, one thing I'm going to talk about in the next episode, I've already launched it just briefly over email, is a new offering for this past Taurus new moon until the full moon on, I think it is May 12th. Really cool new offering called the Threshold Sessions. I know, very interesting. I know some of you guys might be like, what the fuck does that mean? So what it basically means, it's a 90-minute offering. So hour and a half. And it's going to be split into 3 parts. So you guys probably know my 3 big mega without bullshit courses, which are 24 plus hours each, 100 plus pages of worksheets, super mega in-depth, everything you need to know about the topic, are on tarot, witchcraft and magic, and then feminine energy. And so this offering of the Threshold Sessions merges all these things together, because I've noticed that some of the most successful work I've done with people is when they're engaging all of these 3 awarenesses. Tarot can really help us understand what is the underlying story here. What are the patterns that we need to see? What's the analysis of the situation? What is going right and what is going wrong? What do we need to do next? It can help us check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, figure out where the energy is, and make a plan moving forward, and also help us understand, why am I even behaving that way? So that is the first third of the session. The second third of the session will work with the tarot reading that we do together to figure out some specific ritual homework for you to do, depending on where it is you want to go and what area of your life you want to focus on. That could be around reclaiming a sense of self after a breakup or a divorce. It could be around stepping into your power and authority in the workplace. It could be increasing your sense of worthiness around financial increase and who knows, like feeling really worthy at work, things of that nature. It can be pretty much anything. And I know it can be really difficult, especially at the beginning of our journey in witchcraft and magic, to know what to do ritually. It all can be a little bit overwhelming, like which ritual do I do when, what order, what's important, how do I make it happen expeditiously, it's not working, why is it not working, etc., etc. And so troubleshooting the rituals that you've done, creating plans for new rituals that are going to align with your exact way of relating to the world, which everyone has such a different way of doing this, right? Some folks are more sound oriented in the magic that they do. Some folks love water magic. We'll work it out together and I'll come up with a specialized ritual plan for you. And the third part would be more on feminine and masculine energy. And if you don't resonate with that language, we can also talk about that as a more active and a more receptive energy. And we all have both of those inside us, no matter how we were born. We all have that mix of active and receptive energy. We all have that mix of masculine and feminine. We all have that mix of doing, attacking the world, and then luxuriating and just loving our presence and moving from a place of abundance. And it can be really difficult for folks to figure out where's that right balance? How can I strike that balance? Where do I lean forward and where do I lean back? And so that third part of the session is a bit of an energetic audit. I think one of the problems I've noticed with a lot of contemporary women who are dating men is a lot of them are in chase mode and not really getting the results that they want. So that is something I often do audit with people when we're talking about feminine and masculine energy. And I've also seen the total opposite, where folks are so used to getting walked all over, and actually what they need to do is to activate that active, self-preserving, self-loving, self-parenting masculine energy that creates a container for success and a container of safety and self-provision. So I'm really, really excited to begin to offer this. It's a little bit of a window, a 2-week portal as an experiment to see if this lands with you guys. My suspicion is this is going to be some incredibly powerful work that we'll be able to do together. If you're interested in booking one of these, do send me an email through my website, sabrinamscott.com, and I will be happy to get to you ASAP with all the details. Of course, this is already sent out to my mailing list, so if you're on that, do double check. If you, for some reason, can't find it, email me at ceo@sabrinamscott.com, or again, just enter into the form on my website and we will get you sorted. I'm so excited to offer this. I think it's going to be so much fun and we'll really create this transformative catalyst. I'm super, super stoked for this. It always breaks my heart when people have this good idea of who they want to be. They're not happy with their circumstance and they don't know what to do. I'm like, no, let me help you. Like, we can get there through a mix of tarot, energy work, an understanding of masculine and feminine energy, and ritual and magic, and just blending it all together into this perfect, I was going to say perfect pie. I don't know if that metaphor even makes sense, but a pie is delicious. It has multiple parts, so I'm just going to go with that for now. All right, I'm going to leave y'all with that. Talk to you soon. Much love. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.